Welcome to episode number 9 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast, Water. My name is Eric. I'm the host of the show. I'm based in Southern Ontario. I'm a hunter, target shooter, ham radio operator, VE3 EPN, and computer geek. I got into preparedness when I was working frontline emergency services and witnessed an over-reliance on emergency services during major events such as ice storms, power outages, etc. I started a small preparedness company to help people get prepared and be able to look after themselves for at least 72 hours, if not longer.
My name is Ian. I'm co-host of the show. I live on Vancouver Island on a small hobby farm. I'm an outdoor enthusiast, target shooter, reloader, and my farm's designated handyman. My professional background has allowed me to see pretty much every province and territory in Canada. It has also taught me to adapt to unexpected situations daily and learn quickly as I go.
Hi, I'm Gavin. I'm a regular panelist on the other CPP, Canadian Patriot Podcast, an instructor with Ragnarok Tactical, volunteer, first responder, hunter, camper, business owner, CCFR field officer for the GTA, which is where I live.
I'm Alan. My friends and family called me a safety nerd with Just Cause. My background is medical first responder with St. John Ambulance, developed a mind for safety. I spent 17 years seeing people at their worst. Locksmith by trade, a fairly uninteresting job these days, but in my spare/free time, I teach first aid and I coach my friends and family to be better prepared.
Awesome. We've got some great content for you in this episode. First off, our panel's growing. This is great. We're going to start off with some news articles related to preparedness in the outdoors. Next, we'll be letting you know how we've improved our preparedness since the last episode. And then we're going to get into the main topic for the episode, water needs, storage, disinfection, and its role in preparedness. So let's cover off some news articles there first, Ian.
Okay, for sure. We had the just an update on that windstorm we had on the west coast here. The first article I think I gave on the last episode says about 150,000 people without power. Well, the final tally was about 756,000 people without no power. So that's pretty much a third of the province, population-wise anyway. Put a couple articles in the show notes here. Interesting thing did come out of it, though, is actually a really good article written by just a pair of non-prepping types on Salt Spring Island and how they kind of improvised, adapted, and overcame. It's actually really well done for them, considering what they had on hand. I thought it was actually a nice job on their part. I mean, everything from water collection to how they dealt with the lack of heat, everything else, and they may do really well. So I thought it was certainly worth including in the show notes.
Awesome. So it's worthwhile checking out then if you're going through the show notes. Have a look at the website. I've got an article here from December the 8th, so slightly dated, but I thought it'd be a good one to get some conversation going. It's based from Global News, and it's Halton Region's Medical Officer of Health has issued a boil watery advisory for parts of Milton, Ontario, following a water main break. The advisory is expected to remain in place until at least Monday, so that was 2 days they're expecting it to stay in place for. Affected residents are advised to boil water for at least 1 minute and use bottled water for drinking, brushing teeth, and preparing food. It's still safe to bathe in the water for adults and older teens, but the water should not be swallowed. Special care should also be taken when washing dishes, and dishwashers should reach at least 60 degrees Celsius or higher for the dishes to be safely disinfected. So I wanted to add this in as a news article, as it's something that tends to happen quite often, and something that you might want to build into your preps. It's something you might not think about, and then all of a sudden a main breaks near you, and well, now you got to do something about it.
Sure, happened to me here in the summer when I had family over for the weekend and woke up in the morning to the news that we were under a boil water advisory, and there were 8 or 10 of us in the house, and my better half looking at me going, okay, now what? And I said, well, now we got into the water storage that we have in the basement. She said, we have water in the basement? I said, not anymore. Now it's up here.
Yeah, I mean, especially in the winter. I mean, pipes burst all the time. I mean,
Sure, happened in London here where I live. Just this morning, water main broke, and fortunately their grid system worked out that it doesn't result in the boil water, but it could very well if it goes in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
That's not always something that you're expecting, right? Just a piece of pipe bursts, and all of a sudden you've got a boil water on your hands, or boil water advisory on your hands, if I can talk tonight. And you're not thinking about it, and it's a good thing to have a couple cases of water in storage.
Interestingly enough, a lot of those boil water advisories, of course, it's the simplest thing to do is just boil it for 5 minutes or whatever, but it doesn't actually have to reach boiling temperature to actually kill off most of what you're worried about. But I think for most people that don't have a thermostat or a thermometer or anything else to play with, I'm sure that's probably the easiest thing to do.
Fair enough. Yeah. Roll and boil for a while, and away you go.
Yeah, set it and forget it for at least a little bit. Just not for too long. Yeah, you'll come back here. just nothing. Yeah.
Well, we actually have one of those big blue, like ceramic-looking camping kettles type of thing. During the power outage, we just threw that on top of the wood stove just to make sure we had hot water for dishes and everything else we kind of needed hot water for. I guess if it went long enough, we probably would have had to resort to cloth bathing or something at some point. But
yeah, that's at the hunt camp. That's kind of what we do. Is we put a giant pot, fill it with snow when we get there, and put it on top of the oil heater, and then it kind of melts the snow, and then we've got lukewarmish water for washing our face and stuff.
Oh, that works.
Good call.
So maybe we'll move into what we've done lately for our preps.
Oh, I guess that's me first. So I've been working like a dog out of the last 16 days. I think I've been at work for 13 of them. So I just got back yesterday. So I haven't really done a whole lot of stuff around the house. But as I was sitting there bored out of my tree a couple nights, I bought and sold a few things on CGN, or Canadian Gun Nuts. Other than that, the only real preparedness stuff I did was I went online and went shopping for 1,000-gallon water containers for that rainwater collection system I set up on, I think, our first joint episode.
Yeah, you were talking about that the first episode. Yeah, about having the rain coming off the chicken coop, was it?
Yeah, well, we've got a chicken coop and a hay shed that I've got set up now, and each one's got a 50-gallon kind of tub on the bottom where the alpacas drink out of one, and I fill the chicken waters out of the other. But the problem is that it's constantly spilling over right now. I mean, after like a one night of rain, it could go from empty to full easy. So there's a lot of water going off the edge there that I'd rather just collect than just see go bye-bye.
Yeah, fair enough. For myself, I stocked up my water supply at Costco, grabbed a few cases of water. They're the 40 packs there. There's about $2.80 per package. So I grabbed a few to throw in the basement. Moved a bunch of dried firewood we have out in the back shed into the house and the garage. Now we're ready for the snow if it ever decides to show up around here.
You can have some of mine. We got 5 inches this morning, and we were due for another 6 or 7 this afternoon.
I'll take it. I'm itching to get the snowmobile out.
My turn. Also stocked up on cases of water. The local No Frills had a couple of skids out for 88 cents a case, which was I thought a pretty good deal. So I went and filled my car 2 or 3 times and did some cycles, and now I have water for weeks and weeks and weeks. My job's changed a little bit. I spent less time in the office, a little bit more time on the road again. So I changed up my gear and how I carry my my EDC kit, the tools that I use to make myself feel better anyways, whether they actually get me home or not. But changed up how I carry that and how I organize it, and started on a little project for using pencil cases, which are unobtrusive, easy to keep around, and don't attract a lot of attention. Updated my power outage plan. We had a power outage a couple of nights ago, week, I don't know. Anyways, last week sometime. Power was out for about 6 or 7 hours, but happened to go off 5 in the morning as we were getting ready for work, and it was a good time to test it, where I discovered that all the flashlights around are easy to find, and then move the candles and such around to make it a little bit more convenient if the power were going out for longer.
Awesome. I guess we'll move to Gavin.
Yeah, well, I didn't do a whole lot, but I beefed up my very small experimental indoor garden, and by experimental I don't mean pot. It's one of these sort of self-watering, and it's got lights on a timer kind of a thing. It only had 3 plants in it, kind of just to see how it works, and it started to work decently. So I've now got 12 going, and just to see it. Eventually, when I get a bigger place with more space, I, expand it. But for now, it's enough to grow a few little, vegetables and stuff like that as a sort of experiment. And then added some more search and rescue training to my knowledge base. Took an intro to search manager, resource manager, crew leader, route supply. So it's sort of just very basic level stuff. But, when bad things happen, people need to go out and find people that are missing. So.
Awesome. Can never have too much education for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
All right, so maybe we'll move into the main topic of the show. It's water needs, storage, and disinfection.
2 liters a day just for drinking. That's like bare minimum to keep you alive. Any more than that, if you're actually doing things like chopping wood and foraging for food and maintaining any kind of semblance of life, you need a whole lot more than that.
Yeah, and I mean, not just for drinking, but I mean, cleaning up your dishes, going to the bathroom, if you've got any pets or livestock, cooking, etc., you're going to need some water of varying levels of, disinfectant to kind of go along with those things.
I think a lot of that stuff they talk about with the 2 liters per day too. I think that, whether you're in the high Arctic or the desert, I mean, that's going to change a lot, like you said, also as well as how much you're working versus sitting still on the couch.
Yeah. Well, I imagine if you're, in an emergency situation, you're hopefully working a little hard and not sitting around on your butt. Unless, I guess, you've prepped everything, and then you can just sit back and, I guess, watch the world burn.
Oh, I think you'd be surprised how many people would just sit on the couch and just wait for somebody else to do something for them.
Oh, it's true.
Yeah.
Sit and watch your cell phone and wait for someone to show up.
Yeah.
Someone's coming. It's okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's why you have people like Gavin with search and rescue. Someone's
Yeah.
coming. All I have to do is sit back and wait.
Yeah. Yeah, this FEMA camp is a great place to hang out.
I'm sure that's what they'll tell you.
Yeah.
So the role of preparedness for water.
Well, I would say it's key. It's just certainly not as exciting as talking about going to the range or what toys you might have bought on CGN lately or anything else. I mean, like they always say, just try going without to see how much you actually need water.
You can bring water to the range, though, right? That's pretty important.
That's true. You need to have a supply for that. Plus, even the trip to the range, you want to make sure you have bottles of water with you too.
Yeah. Unless you're lucky and you can shoot on your own property, and then you've probably already got water at the range.
True, yeah. Good point.
Yeah.
This
Well-
topic is making me thirsty.
Yeah, I would definitely say, water is key. I mean, I was on a trip to Australia once, and our van broke down in the middle of the outback.
Ooh.
And I mean, I had several liters of water on me, but until you're in a situation where you're not entirely sure how long you're going to be out there and it's really hot, you don't realize just how thirsty you get. And then you'll take a few sips, and then you go, oh, I need to conserve this. And so you put it away, and then like not even a minute later, you're like, man, I'm really thirsty, and you take another sip, and then you're like, uh-oh, right, I'm conserving.
Well, there's that whole mental thing too, where you're telling yourself, I don't have a lot of water, so now you're extra thirsty because you realize that there's only so much to go through.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a lot to be said too. Is what kind of physical condition you're in too is going to dictate how fast you go through water too. If you're what do you call it, stressing yourself out just by getting up off the couch, so to speak, versus like maybe a little better shape, it's certainly going to affect your consumption rate.
Yeah, but I don't like cold in the winter, so
yeah,
there's things to be said on both sides.
Well, it's certainly our first concern when the power goes out because we don't have city water and so no pressurized lines or anything. We have a little accumulator at the bottom of the hill. So the power goes out. It's kind of our first concern to make sure we have enough water to last the next little while, especially if it's below freezing. We don't want any pipes to freeze or anything else. I think it's probably different if you're in the city as well. If you've got the pressurized water tower that has the accumulator up in the air and gives you solid pressure too.
When we had that power outage in 2003, I lived on the 25th floor of my apartment building downtown, and I was out 3 days helping people that needed it more I did. I got home and the generators had been shut down for refueling. After day 2, the generator didn't have enough power to get water up to my apartment. So I looked up at the stairs and I realized that there was no water up there, and I thought, I'm just not going up there tonight. 25 floors straight up 3 days later, not happening. But
it's definitely something to keep in mind. It's something you take for granted, right? You just turn the tap on, the water flows, and you don't really think about it until power goes out and suddenly that water's not flowing. Yep. We're in the same kind of boat as you, Ian, where we're on a well system. Power goes out, we got no water unless you can get power to the pump, right? Which is a good thing we got the backup generator to power the pump for us. But same thing, you don't think about, well, now what?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and for us too, I mean, rainwater collection's fine and dandy, but I mean, 5 months of the year here, believe it or not, on the West Coast, well, especially where we are anyway, we have actually zero rain for months on end, and it's actually kind of hard to believe when you think of the stereotypical view of it. But I mean, we get so bad out here during the summertime, they actually have like no chainsaw bans and everything else because they're so afraid of just sparks off the chainsaw and everything else. So it gets pretty extreme here this summer with no rain.
Oh, wow. Yeah, last summer we were pretty dry for actually pretty much the whole summer. We got the pond out the back and it was almost down to nothing, which hasn't happened I've been here 5 years and I've never seen it get down that low. So it's no rain, no water, and something you got to think about.
No, I mean, luckily, being so close to the city, I generally don't have to worry about that. We've almost always got water, and I live fairly close to the lake if needed, and the river is right behind my house. But up at the hunt camp in the winter, we don't have running water at all. So we've got to pack it all in. So, I mean, you know, if we go up there for a week, we've got to bring every milliliter of water we need. We've got to bring it in.
And you got to keep it from freezing.
Yeah.
That too, yeah. Yeah, we're the same way at the hunt camp I go to. There's no running water there, so you got to bring it in with you.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully not too many people in emergency want to eat the fish out of Lake Ontario there. I remember that safe eating guide that we used to get.
You're allowed one a year.
What's a little mercury among friends, right?
Yeah.
So the fish has 3 eyes, nothing to worry about.
It's extra protein.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know if eating the coyotes that live along the banks are any better, because they're probably eating the fish. So.
Oh yeah.
At least they're easy to see because they're glowing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Should we talk about disinfection there?
Yeah, let's get into disinfection. So as far as disinfecting water, there's all kinds of different ways you can go about it. There's different schools of thought on it. So figure we'll touch on a few that we're all kind of familiar with, and maybe try to dispel some myths as well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, a couple of ones I came up with. Well, first of all, like bleach, obviously that's kind of something everybody has. Make sure you get the unscented type if you're going to actually like use this as a backup plan. Like it has to be unscented in a certain type of percentage and everything else. But bleach only lasts a year or so, so it does have to be rotated out. But there's tons of information online about how to use bleach to disinfect water. But the general rule is like 2 drops per liter. If you really want to go extra cheap on it, I think for about $8 you can get a bag of Pool Shock, which is the exact same stuff. It's like concentrated powdered bleach. I put a couple of links in the show notes to a great video by a guy I've met a couple times, HFX Prepper. He's actually got a good video on how to turn that into household bleach, and then actually how to use it for disinfecting water. So
he's got a few good episodes on his YouTube channel there too, so it's worth checking out.
Yeah.
And I was going to mention the Aqua Tabs, so that's something you might want to add to your kit. You can get a little package of them. Comes with 50 tablets. Each tablet's good for a liter of water. Nice, small, light. Got a pack here if anybody's watching. You can see what they look like. They don't have to be in the box. You can take them out of the box or in small little foil wrappers inside and just throw them in your kit, and you've got them, and it's good for at least a liter of water.
Yeah, I bought, actually back when I still lived in Ontario at Zehrs, in the pharmacy section, they used to sell the tincture of iodine. I think it's about $2. And we actually ended up using it a lot for making a sterile solution for animal usage. You can use it as a topical anesthetic, but you can also make it basically the color of a weak tea, and it's actually good for using for medical purposes and everything else. It's actually good, but it also sterilizes water. So it's kind of a good thing to use.
I've used the tabs and iodine while backpacking.
But I think iodine, it doesn't taste as well as I think most people would like.
No, I mean, you can also get the iodine tablets as well, rather than just the liquid form. But yeah, it's not my preference.
But it really works because you're still here.
Yeah, it works, but not my preference. I would rather pick something else and save that for medical emergencies, and then when everything runs out, sure, I'll go to iodine.
Fair enough.
I threw this next one in here. Did you guys hear about this next point here, the SODIS?
No, I was wondering what that was all about.
Okay, so actually it's something that some doctor came up with for the third world usage because it's ludicrously cheap to do and super easy. Works obviously better if you're in a place with lots of sun, but so it stands for solar distillation, but there's actually no distillation involved in it whatsoever. But there's actually a book online in the show notes as well. It's free. But basically what you do is you just take a 2-liter bottle, as long as it's been used for like drinkable liquids beforehand, but you just throw filtered water in there, throw it up on a roof and leave it there for 24 to 48 hours, depending on the sunlight level. And basically just the sunlight alone with the refraction action from the plastic bottle kills any protozoa that are going to cause intestinal distress. So if as long as it's been filtered, that'll take care of the bugs.
Yeah, I remember seeing something like that a couple of years ago. They were using little pieces of, or little segments of tin roof or something that were, it was a kit that was being distributed through Africa, and it was a bunch of water bottles. It was a bunch of bottles and this tin roof frame contraption they could put out in the sun and do something similar to that. I don't know if it's the same thing. I'd have to read up on it, but
yeah, it pretty much is, because basically it relies on the ultraviolet radiation from the sun to kill most of the bugs, but also heats up the water. Of course, sitting on a hot roof in Africa or you know, the GTA in summertime type of thing. I mean, it's going to be getting hot enough that it's basically the equivalent of a boil water action.
Right.
So it certainly works well. But it's actually a fascinating read. It's only, I think, about 50 pages, so it's worth your while just to leaf through when times are good, I guess.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because UV lights are something that I've seen too. I've even seen some of those fancier water bottles with a UV light built into the cap, so you can kind of hit the button and zap your water, and away you go.
Yeah, I had a UV system put in when I moved in here with the well water. There was nothing at all before in the house, so I thought, you know what, may as well have that added in, just a little bit of peace of mind, right? Why not? And it just runs away once a year. I got to replace the UV light, and covers the whole house off. So why not?
Yeah.
Who wants to talk about Berkeys?
I think you're the resident expert, aren't you, Ian?
I buy my stuff off you, so I don't know. Yeah. So, anyways, we bought a Berkey back when we lived in Barrie, Ontario, actually, and because the water was pretty hard there, and it didn't taste the world's best anyway. So we ended up getting the Berkey just for drinking usage. But of course, it's the filters themselves are actually made out of well, the old ones were ceramic. The new ones are actually like almost like a burnt, dried coconut husk compressed, and basically it filters the water so well that it takes out any protozoa or any sort of bacteria out of it as well. So they started using it in third world countries, and now they use it obviously in North America just for a home usage. And it's just on the counter year round, but it also in case you had to use rainwater or whatever have you, it's an instant kind of filter and virus removal. There's also attachments you can get for it to actually take the fluoride out of the water. You know what that fluoride does?
Tinfoil hat time.
Yeah. turns the frogs gay or something like that. But yeah, and so yeah, definitely. I mean, there's ways to go about it on the cheap as well. I mean, the main cost of the Berkey is the filters, but by the same token, that what they charge you for those stainless steel buckets is kind of ludicrous. So again, on YouTube, quick search on YouTube, you'll come up with 2 pails and Berkey filters, and you can do the same thing for probably about half the cost. But buy your filters from Eric.
I appreciate it. So we got some other things here, point-wise. The Sawyer and Lifestraw. I figured I'd mix them in together because they're relatively the same kind of idea. Lifestraw is one that I'm familiar with. I've seen the Sawyer, but I've never actually used it.
Well, okay, so I have had the Lifestraw as well. The Lifestraw is like kind of like almost like a one-time use. There you go.
There it is.
You don't have a whole lot of gallons of water, but enough to get you where you're going for, like, say, a bug out bag or a short-term emergency. The problem is the muddier the water, the faster it kind of clogs up, and you can't really backwash it. Yeah. And whereas the Sawyer, which is this one right here, $20 at Walmart in the States, I think about $20 on Amazon in Canada, and it's good for about 10,000 gallons. And they actually even takes the instructions right down to the simplest there, which way to flow the water. It's got a syringe to push it through, a foldable bag that basically you can hang like a medical saline bag, and then you can take a 3/8" vinyl PVC tube and drain it into a bottle or whatever have you. It can be backwashed, so if you got really muddy water, you can clean it out just by running the syringe. Just take it from one end, take it to the other, backwash it, and then the filter's clean again. Works great. It weighs about an ounce. There's nothing to it.
Wow, Lifestraws in my kit. I've used those before. I like that Sawyer though. I'm gonna find one and try it.
Well, yeah, because it's the same cost as a Lifestraw, but I think it filters about 10 times as much water theoretically.
Yeah, the Lifestraw will do 1,000 liters or about 260 gallons.
Yeah,
and
so
that's it. And that
10,000. It's a big difference. Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever. So it's bang for your buck. That's why I kind of said the Lifestraw is a little bit obsolete. I mean, it still works, but it's not as cost efficient or whatever as this thing.
So, Eric, when are you going to start selling the Sawyers so I can buy them?
So check out Rapid Survival tomorrow morning.
But also the interesting thing on the Sawyers here, they have the little O-ring that you'd find on a garden hose or whatever, because they're also meant to be screwed right into a 2-liter bottle. So you fill a 2-liter bottle with whatever water you want to filter, and you can actually squeeze a 2-liter bottle as well. So they're almost like a Swiss Army knife because, like I said, the attachments are a standard size for the same stuff you'd use to collect maple syrup, run water, booze. If you're a homebrew guy, you can use the same PVC tubing you use for stills and stuff. And it's very versatile for sure. And again, tons of videos on YouTube on how to use those.
So Lifestraws are going on sale to clean out stock, and Sawyer's coming in.
Well, you might want to check out those MSR filters I was talking about too. I keep one of those in my bug out bag because they're pretty handy. They've got like a little foam pre-filter to get all the really heavy stuff when you sort of chuck it into a mud puddle, and then a ceramic filter, and then charcoal inside, and they'll screw onto an Nalgene, or they've got adapters if you want to put it onto a Camelback. And they're great for backpacking and camping and all of that in remote areas.
Actually, you're kind of the subject matter expert on the Camelbacks there, Gavin. Can you explain to the viewers that may not be familiar with that? How it works?
Yeah. So I guess it's a hydration bladder is the technical term for it. It's basically a bag full of water that you put on your back inside of a backpack or a standalone unit, and then it's got like a giant hose that you drink out of. So you can store large quantities of water on your person and be active and go for a run or a hike. That's typically when I go to the range, that's usually what I'll use, because I'll have my plates on, and then in the back of my plate carrier I've got one of these hydration bladders, so it doesn't take up a whole lot of space for how much water you can carry, and it's very convenient.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at, was the plate carrier is one way to carry it, but also even those 511 backpacks have a little slot in the that goes right up against your back to fit in the hydration pack as well.
Yeah, a lot of people use that to put a laptop in, but it can also be used to carry a hydration bladder.
What were you saying there, Alan?
I think every one of my backpacks that I've had in the last 10 years is designed to have that, has a little pass through for the hose and or for the drinking too. And
most decent backpacks these days will, because they're fairly popular, and there's a bunch of different brands. Camelback was kind of the original one, and now there's Platypus, and then there's like the 1,000 Chinese knockoff versions. But I highly recommend them.
Do you, just so you know, also that I hate to plug the Sawyer again, but here I go. So in line for the hydration pack, actually, if you have to put skunky water in it, this basically fits right on your shoulder on the backpack, plate carrier, whatever. There's actually you can get MOLLE attachments for it, and it go right in line for the thing.
That is one of the really cool things about that one.
So you can suck it right through. It works really well.
Awesome.
But how do you guys keep the hydration bladders from getting all skunky? Like, do you have to actually dry them and then kind of make sure they hang and everything else? Or
yeah, they're kind of a pain in the ass to clean, to be honest. But if you buy, they do sell kits.
Yeah, mine has a flexible wire brush that goes down the tube, but I just plan to replace the tube every year. And
yeah, I mean, if all you do is drink water out of it, it's not going to get too gross too quickly. Especially if you use it frequently. The biggest thing I find is the bag gets kind of gross. So you just wash that out with, soapy water, and then just make sure you thoroughly rinse it, because you don't want diarrhea from drinking soap. And then you just let it dry. And that's the hard part, is finding something that'll keep the bag open so you can let it dry. And they also sell racks that are designed for that. But I just use one of those paper towel roll holder things in my kitchen to hold it open and up and dry it.
I think the best one I've seen for water bladders, and I know they went out of business a while ago, so I don't think they're kicking around anymore, but was the Geiger rig. It was a pressurized water bladder. But what you could do is you could open it up. The top was just kind of like a Ziploc kind of setup, but a little bit more tougher. And then you could unlock that part of it, flip it inside out, and it was actually dishwasher safe. Toss it in the dishwasher.
That's actually a pretty cool idea.
Yeah, it was really neat. But a couple of years ago, they went out of business, and I don't know. I heard rumors that another company had picked them up, but I don't know if it ever actually went through or if they just completely ended.
Yeah, because I mean, I've got the fairly wide mouth Camelback ones, which are great. Unless you're trying to fill them up while they're laying flat, then water goes everywhere. But yeah, even that massive hole isn't quite big enough to get my hand in. So I mean, you can't really scrub them that great unless you use some sort of a brush. But I just hate buying a single-use tool.
Yeah.
But it is what it is, right?
Oh, exactly. If it's the best thing you got, then that's what you got.
Yeah. Is this kind of what you were talking about with Alan? Is 3/8 PVC type of thing for that you just change out?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then just put the little bite valve on the other end, and the screw on it. I think mine is a platypus brand, and it's kind of a barbed fitting on the bladder end, and the bite valve just pressure fits again. So you replace it with a few more feet a couple of times a year, every year, whatever. And I find as long as I don't let it sit, right? As long as I replenish with fresh water, then it doesn't get too stagnant. But
yeah, I find the same. And yeah, the hoses are fairly inexpensive, even if you buy branded hoses as opposed to your own just PVC tubing, which is basically what it is. And yeah, they're easy there. They're just little sort of ridges on it that hold it in place good enough.
Yep. So a couple other ways to do it on the cheap, I guess. We were talking about this, I think, when I was in another power outage. They're rating the hotel room. Reusable coffee filters, those plastic ones, or the gold ones. You can obviously use paper coffee filters if you need to filter water in a rough way. Strainers, colanders from the dollar store, everything else, just to get the rough stuff out of the water before you kind of filter it for real. There's something to think about as well.
A good first step. Yep.
One thing I kind of just made a note here, but I wasn't sure how to explain it. But if somebody wants to make a homemade pail filter, I mean, that's another thing that's like an internet search away. But basically, take a 5-gallon pail, kind of put about 4 holes in the bottom. The material we came up with it's actually a tea bag from Costco, the green tea, Ito-N or whatever the brand name is. It's plastic, so won't go bad, and it's got super duper fine mesh, obviously for steeping tea. But if you kind of glue those or attach those to the bottom of the holes. Put sand, I don't know, coarse rock, charcoal, thick rock, or like coarser rock on top. You can certainly take care of the bulk of your filtration needs before you actually put it to your real filter, which will extend the life of your real filter as well.
Yeah, all good options.
Yeah, or you could even stretch pantyhose over tubing and stuff like that as a rough filter to get big stuff out of there.
Yeah, I've got tons in my sock drawer. Oh, never mind. Sorry.
No, that's another podcast.
Yeah, that's another podcast. Yeah.
So maybe we'll move into storage. So some options to actually store the water, because it's good to talk about how to be able to consume it and such, but you got to have a way to store it as well. It's one of the ways that I've seen done and actually sell this product as well is the water bob. So it holds about 1,000 gallons of water. That's 378 liters. It's designed to work in your bathtub. So you just throw it in the bathtub, and it's a barrier between your bathtub and the water itself. And it's got a little pump on the top, so you can pump water out. Makes life a little bit easier because that's a heck of a lot of water. But one thing as well is people always assume that it needs to be in a bathtub. Doesn't need to be in a bathtub. It can actually support itself outside of the bathtub. Just put it in a bathtub, gives it a spot to sit, and makes it a little bit easier to work with. But you got to throw it somewhere else. You can.
Yeah, that makes good sense. I saw that on Doomsday Preppers, I want to say, when I was watching on Netflix.
Well, I wonder what at the beginning of the movie, The Road with Viggo Mortensen there, the first thing he does is fill up the tub when he sees some unknown disaster happening on the horizon. So hopefully he had a water bob at the time. But did you show
what they look like?
Yeah, I was going to say, did you show the camera?
Hold it. There you go. If I can get it upside right, but yeah, that's the box there, and yeah,
it's definitely a prop show this time. So
it is, yep.
Yeah, but I was gonna say you said it's freestanding. Is it like a thick plastic, or how does it actually support itself?
Yeah, so it's a thicker plastic for freestanding. So it's if you can put it in a bathtub, that's obviously ideal. But I've talked to the owner and the designer of it, and he said if you want to put it out freestanding, go ahead. It'll be fine.
Cool.
Yeah.
So the water you bought, Alan?
I have a ton, an absolute ton of water bottles downstairs in the basement. Now after that big sale, but water catchment is kind of my next level of prepping. I've got a lot of roof line, and I want to capture that in barrels. Then set up some way to do that pre-filter, so that when I do get that Sawyer, I'm extending the life of it as long as possible. I had rain barrels the last place I lived, and it was great even just for watering the lawn when it didn't rain often enough.
Yeah, there's one thing that I haven't set up and I need to, but it's called a first flush diverter, and I think Engineer 775 on YouTube does a big thing on it. But basically, it's something that fills a PVC pipe with all the scuzzy stuff that comes off the roof first, and then once it fills up, then the theory is that just nothing but water comes down into the storage tub. Cool. And he just it's like a trap. He just empty out the trap once in a while. Yeah, but the other thing with the barrels too is that we've run into is, especially on uneven terrain here, is once you join a bunch of them together, they're not very easy to move around, especially if you're using PVC or something. So I guess a flexible hose between the two would actually work better. That's what we found anyway.
Yeah, I'd want to make sure that it's something that could be compartmentalized, so that if one barrel became compromised, it wouldn't affect the rest of the system.
Yeah, a lot of shutoffs and unions. It's been a lot on hardware. That's what we found so far.
That'd be more fun.
Yeah. So who came
up
up with
with
that one?
here? So hot water tanks. That's one that you'll see and hear about quite a lot in the prepper world. It holds a significant amount of water, but the one thing that people always seem to forget about is the fact that there's a drain on the bottom, and it's not always operational. So you want to make sure that that's maintained and actually works. As well, the tanks will fill up with a bunch of sludge if you don't flush them out every once in a while. So not exactly something you want to be drinking if you're not maintaining the tank and cleaning the sludge out. And as well, if you're running an anode rod in it, and it's aluminum, remember the water is going to be contaminated with aluminum. So a couple of things to keep in mind there for hot water tanks. I know it's a popular thing that a lot of preppers think, the power goes out or something goes on, and I'm just going to use my hot water tank and I'm not going to worry about anything else. Well, we'll make sure that the tank is actually maintained, because if you don't, it's not going to supply safe water for you.
Yeah, my hot water tank rusted years ago. It was the water that came out of it was not clean.
Yeesh. I flushed mine out when I first moved into the house, and it wasn't pretty. And we ended up putting the new one in, and I clean it out about every 6 months or so.
Yeah.
I have a legit question for you guys, but we didn't live in Ontario long enough for it to come into play, but we always had a hot water tank rental. Was that kind of province-wide, or was that kind of just a local thing where I lived?
I don't think anybody buys hot water tanks anymore in Ontario anyways. Everyone I know rents them.
Oh, okay, because that was actually the only place I've ever seen that does the rental thing. And so, do they actually replace them every 15 years?
I ask for mine to be replaced every about 5 years, just because I'm paying for it. I might as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that most people don't really know that they're doing it. They just pay their water bill.
Okay, yeah, that kind of threw us off. I was like, oh, okay, well, that's weird. You wouldn't own one, and it became cost prohibitive. We actually did the research, and of course, it was actually with our budget in place. I guess it was just cheaper to let it sit for a while, but I guess eventually we would have changed it out.
I guess I'm the odd Ontarian out. I bought mine.
Somebody put office cooler jugs in there. What's the cost kind of ratio on office cooler water versus buying 2 liters on sale or whatever? Is it fairly cheap?
The bottle itself isn't a huge investment. I think the last time I bought any significant number of them, they were about $5 a piece, and then they're about $3 to fill. So overall, fairly cost effective to hold 5 gallons of water.
Okay.
I guess the trick there would be getting the water out if you don't have one of the water cooler.
Any place that fills it, like the Culligan store or whatever, they actually have a little manual pump. So you don't actually have to have a cooler. You can just set it on its back with the neck up, and then there's a little manual pump, and it looks almost like a soap dispenser. There's a little pump and has a hose that goes down to drain it.
I guess if for the listeners too, if you're gonna actually fill your own jugs of water to storage, you gotta make sure you rotate them. There is some products out there I think that allow you to store it for a little while longer than you would expect, but as a general, you don't want to get them gummed up with sludge down the road. So you'd want to change out your rotate your water supplies for sure. Because I think it's one thing if you buy it pre-packaged, like the office cooler jugs or the water on sale and everything else. But I think if you're just gonna buy a barrel and fill it with tap water, eventually you have to change that out.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Even the bottled water, you're going to want to rotate out eventually.
Yeah, and also make sure that you're not storing it directly on concrete. Keep it isolated so it's not picking up whatever else might be in the environment. That's pretty thin plastic.
Ironically, you're going to need water to clean out your water storage container.
Just good
this is why preparation is better than reaction.
Yeah.
Well, also I think if it sits too long too, it gets kind of flat tasting, which is I think it's just oxygen gassing off, isn't it? From what I understand.
You need to re-oxygenate it, which you can kind of do by shaking it up. But if it's in a big container, that's really hard to do.
Yeah, or slosh it up a bit or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Get a big straw and just blow bubbles in it.
An enormous soda stream.
Yeah.
The other thing to keep in mind is usage rates. So if you're going to be using your toilets, 5 gallons of flush, looking at some low flow toilets might be an idea once it's time to change them out, right?
Or
Oh,
fill a 2-liter bottle with water and put it in your tank. That'll reduce the amount there.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, little offset.
Yeah, we put a
Or
brick in
or
it.
a brick.
Yeah, we put a brick in
yeah.
ours, but the problem is it
Yeah.
really changed the way it flushed. It actually sometimes you end up having to flush it twice to make sure it worked properly. And the other thing I was going to mention too is that when we were dealing with our water loss for a couple days there, is it's amazing how much toilets actually do use. You know, and we had like a little antique kind of porcelain ewer that we're using to fill the toilets up and stuff. But yeah, 5 gallons of flush, the water disappears fast. So I'd highly recommend getting if you do have the chance to change out to a low flow toilet if you're in the rural environment.
Oh, that's good sense.
Or use the old standby. If it's yellow, let it mellow.
Yeah. We were doing that too, yeah.
And if it's not -30, just go pee behind the shed. Doesn't
Yeah.
do when we're sitting on fire?
Yeah,
Yep,
dig an outhouse. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and the forgotten aspect of preparedness too, I guess, animal needs. So even if it's just your dog or whatever have you, your fish, whatever, you know, they're all going to end up needing water sooner or later too. So if you have to put
Especially
some
your
aside,
fish.
yeah, the fish,
Yeah.
they drink it like water, man.
Yep.
So yeah, no, for sure, it's something to think about as far as extra requirements.
Absolutely.
We have my family goes to a cottage up in on the edge of Algonquin Park in Ontario every year, and they take their water right out of the lake. This year when we were up there, it was all under advisory. You couldn't use it. Couldn't even use it we weren't supposed to use it for dishwashing. We put some bleach in the sink and then added soap. But 4 of us in August. It was a pretty hot summer, and we were going through a 5-gallon jug every day. Cooking, cleaning, all that good stuff. So it was just one of those things that really put it into perspective, because I mean, we've been told 2 liters a day, you know, over and over and over again, but when you actually have to rely on 2 liters a day, it doesn't go very far.
No, I mean, I've gone camping in, you know, the mountains in Utah where there's no shade in, you know, July, and I mean, I was going through way more than 2 liters a day.
Oh, sure.
You know, I think at one day, I think I drank something like 6 liters of water or more, just because I was sweating so much. Like, and that's not even cooking or cleaning anything. It was just drinking water.
Wow. I remember one time working in a parking lot. I was doing a job that required us to be out at a control gate for a truck facility, and it was, you know, 45 degrees in full sun, and there was no shade all around us. The heat was reflecting off the tarmac, and I think everybody on the team drank 7 or 9 liters and didn't pee once the entire day. We were just sweating it out so quickly.
Yeah, I've been there. Yeah, and Canada Day, I was volunteering. I wasn't even out that long, and I think I drank something like 4 liters of water in a few hours. And yeah, same thing. It was like I wasn't peeing because I was sweating it out so much.
That's funny how your environment can dictate how much water you have to actually drink, what you're going to go through.
This is probably a good time to mention the indicators, right? I mean, we know we have to drink water, but when do we need to drink more water? And the big one, if it's yellow, let it mellow, right? If the color of your urine is the best indicator of your level of hydration. The darker it is, the more water you need to drink. So I've always said dark is bad, absent is worse. If you're at that level of dehydration where your urine is any more than, you know, the color of diluted apple juice, then it's time to get more water on board.
Yeah.
This is by the time you feel thirsty, you're actually already like 8% dehydrated or something. There's actually like a figure out there, but it's like by the time you're actually thirsty, it's time to really get on fixing that right off the bat.
Yeah,
it should almost be clear if you're actually drinking enough, like you actually should, I think. But
yeah, but you have to be careful though, because you can drink too much water, and it can actually be just as dangerous as not drinking enough water.
Is that hyperhidrosis or something like that?
Yeah, like it can really mess with you, and it can be fatal. Like it messes up your body pH and all kinds of stuff like that. Now, I mean, you're going to have to drink so much of it that like it probably hurts, but you know, it happens often with kids at sporting events and stuff like that, because their coaches are like, "It's hot out, hydrate, drink this water," and they just keep forcing them to drink water and drink water and drink water. So, I mean, it's rare, but it happens.
Yeah, it's something to be aware of, because people always think about dehydration. Yeah, you never really consider overhydration.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing to think of too when you're hydrating is that we sweat more than just water. So make sure if you are being active and you are taking care of your water, that you're replacing the electrolytes that you're losing as well. So the sodium, potassium, magnesium, the electrolyte tabs or Gatorade powder or whatever. Another good thing to keep on hand when you're not in your normal routine.
Yeah. Yeah, if you buy MREs, especially the American ones, they come with a little bag of electrolyte powder.
It's like budget Kool-Aid, isn't it, or something like that? Or budget
Pretty
Gatorade?
much, yeah. Yeah, they can't pay for the brand name stuff, so they get the knockoff stuff. But it comes in handy every time I open up an MRE and I don't use that. I just tuck it away in my sort of go bag so that I've got some.
Does it have any flavor to it at all?
Yeah, it's usually like the lemon lime one.
Huh.
I seem to remember fruit punch in the MREs I had when I was younger.
Yeah, they've changed over the years. If you use that stuff and you put it in your Camelback, you definitely need to clean it out more frequently.
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, Ian, it's time to move on to the podcast challenge.
Alrighty, so podcast challenge for tonight should be relatively inexpensive for everybody. I just suggested buying a 1 gallon jug of unscented bleach or a package of Pool Shock, I think for $8 on Amazon, or just whatever your personal preference is for basically disinfecting the water. And then just with your own materials around the house, the other part of the challenge is to figure out one way to filter water with your supplies on hand, so at least get the dirt out of it. So whether it just be, like I said, paper coffee filters and a plan or something like that, just make sure you have some sort of plan in place.
Awesome. And if you do complete the podcast challenge, make sure to send an email in. Let us know how you completed it and the fact that you did. Anything that went well, anything that didn't go well, anything you learned. You can let us know at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca. So we'll take some time for some shout-outs.
All right. I've never met them before, but the two people that wrote the little article in the local newspaper here that I put in the show notes, Patricia Robitaille and Robert Moran. So even though I don't really like referencing the CBC very much, but hey, it was actually a decent article that somebody had sent to me. So non-preppers who improvised and overcame without sitting around waiting for others to help them. So they did get a lot of hate mail on their commentary, which I found funny because most of the guys were like, well, I'm way tougher than that, I do way better than that. But considering these people were starting from zero, in the space of a couple of days, they actually came out fairly ahead compared to everybody else around there. So I thought it was pretty worthwhile.
They didn't die. It's a win.
It's a win for sure.
Yep. So I've got a shout out to Terry Blackmore. He's the author of Antigenic Shift. Got the book right here. If you haven't already grabbed a copy of his book, I've put a link in the show notes. You can grab it on Amazon. I happen to have a signed copy of the book that I'm planning on holding on to for a while, and I'll sell it for millions one day. But it's worth checking out.
I'll have to give it a read.
And we'll get into some listener email. So first off, if you want to send in a question, suggest a topic for the show, or just give us some general feedback, whether it's positive, negative, or anywhere in between, feel free to send an email into feedback@prepperpodcast.ca, and we'll make sure to read it out on the next show. So we've got one email in since the last episode. It says, "Hey guys, just caught up with your recent first aid episode, and I just wanted to let you know my experience with the Red Cross. I took my certification in April 2018, and they did do a hands-on training with commercial tourniquets. They used the actual cats, but only applied them to paint rollers. So they were smaller than what you would normally deal with and had no clue as to how tight you actually needed them to go. Thankfully, they taught them correctly and told you not to loosen them or remove them, but the subject was over quickly. Keep up the great work with the podcast. All the best. Better, Andrew." He also mentioned a few things that we could implement during the show. So we're going to do our best to make sure to do that for some future episodes. And thanks for the suggestions.
Do we have a second to talk about that?
Yeah,
I do teach for the Red Cross. That is something that we do teach in every class. I'm actually getting ready for one on the weekend. When we first rolled that out, it was a thing where if anybody volunteered, we could actually apply it to somebody and then check a pulse and demonstrate it. And then the Red Cross said no. There's too much potential to do vascular damage, which I'm not convinced that that's the case. But I think there was pushback against actually putting that on somebody because of the potential damage. So now we're actually not allowed to teach that. We're not allowed to apply it in a real world situation.
Sounds like lawyers got involved.
It really does, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I mean, I have some experience with this stuff too. So Andrew, that was on the first aid one, is the owner of Ragnarok and an instructor with me, and actually better Andrew that wrote this email. All three of us took a TCCC class together.
Okay.
We applied, for those that don't know, tactical combat casualty care, tourniquets to ourselves and others multiple times throughout the day. There is the perceived notion that putting one on can cause all kinds of nerve damage and muscle damage and all of that stuff, but it doesn't. I mean, it's very, 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 very rare that would happen. I mean, you'd have to severely over tighten it or leave it on for like more than 4 to 6 hours.
As a general description, without this being legal advice or first aid advice on the, but as a general instruction, guys, when you're twisting the cat on, basically, like, can you just give me a general idea? Like, wait till the guy screams, then 2 more loops or 2 more twists, or how would you describe it?
He's probably already screaming.
Yeah,
you turn off the tap, right? The indicator is a lack of blood flow. When the blood stops flowing, stop turning.
Yeah. Okay. Or if you can't tighten it anymore, then you can stop.
Yeah.
And then don't loosen it. Don't take it off. If it starts squirting blood again, put another one on above the one that's already on there.
And mark the time, right?
Yeah.
Mark the time. And if you have to apply more than one, then mark the time of each one individually.
Yeah.
But
I'm glad they're finally starting to teach that stuff.
And it's interesting because the Red Cross teaches that. That's something that only started earlier this year. Last year. St. John Ambulance still doesn't teach that even at their advanced level.
Yeah, I was going to say,
they still don't teach it.
I've taken the St. John's Ambulance one at that level, and I asked my instructor about tourniquets, and they didn't even know what I was talking about.
And it's weird because 20 years ago when I started teaching, and when I started taking and learning more about this, we taught tourniquets. It was all improvised, of course. It was just a triangular bandage and a stick, but back then it was a thing, and then they did away with it, and then it's
I did my wilderness emergency first aid one many years ago, and we learned how to improvise.
Yeah.
Your neckerchief and a stick, right? Yeah. And then I go take what's supposed to be the first responder level one, and it's like the instructor didn't even know what I was talking about. I was like, how do you not know what I'm talking about? Like, you use tourniquets in surgery. When you take my blood, you put a tourniquet on. Like, I get maybe saying, hey, we don't teach that because of liability and being honest about it, but to just flat out deny that they exist is ridiculous. Like,
and that often speaks to the experience of the teacher too, and that's another thing to take into consideration with where you're taking your training is what is the experience of the instructor.
Yeah, but luckily I am glad to see that finally one of the major organizations has started teaching it, and then they've also Stop the Bleed is another one that's starting to do that, and I'm looking at getting put on as an instructor for that stuff. So we'll hopefully be able to
offer the same thing.
Yeah, there's some hoops to jump through for those guys for sure.
Yeah, which is good. You want somebody who doesn't know what a tourniquet is to be teaching this stuff.
Yeah.
Did you get any iTunes reviews at all, Eric?
Yeah, so we don't have any new iTunes reviews since the last episode. We are still at the last comment from the Sasquatch research scientist, which I still think is a great username. However, we do have a few Podbean reviews. We do have we're up to 9 ratings on iTunes, so we're up to 8 5-stars, and then we still got that one off 4-star. But like I keep saying, we'll take it. Podbean. Admittedly, I haven't been talking about those reviews on the show. I should have been. We've been getting actually quite a bit on Podbean. We've got one from the last episode from the Torque Master, appropriate because we're talking about tourniquets. It says, another excellent podcast with the wealth of good information on first aid training, knowledge, and gear. Keep up the great work, guys. So
I guess
I'll make sure to add the Podbean reviews in the next episodes.
For sure, and if anybody has any first aid questions or clarifications or whatever, for sure bring them up. I'm sure it looks like we have some resident experts here now, so it could probably fine tune another episode worth of first aid, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
We could talk for days just on that. Yep.
Oh yeah.
So I guess time for the outro, I guess. Eh?
Time for the outro. So I'm going to bring episode number 9 of the Canadian Prepper podcast to an end. I'd like to say thank you, Gavin and Alan, for coming out and being a part of this episode. I hope you'll come back for future episodes to share your knowledge with our listeners and make sure they've got somebody else to listen to besides just myself and Ian.
Anytime.
So where can people find the show?
You can find the show on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. So please help us out. Take a few minutes and submit a review. Helps other people find us.
You can also find it at prepperpodcast.ca. I did have to practice that to not stumble over it. YouTube live shows are now available. Please subscribe to the Island Retreat YouTube channel and click the notifications tab. That will give you alerts when we're going live.
If you want to contact me, this is Ian speaking, directly, you can reach me at theislandretreat@gmail.com. You can also occasionally find me giving my 2 cents worth on Canadian Patriot Podcast, also available on iTunes and YouTube.
And please check out Rapid Survival. It's at rapidsurvival.com. You can get me there on the live chat while buying some prepper gear. You can also email me at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca while you're still buying some prepper gear at Rapid Survival. Thanks for joining us, and tune in for the next episode where we're going to talk about ham radio and prepper communications. Until next time, be prepared, stay safe,
and keep learning.